Right, and the time is 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, March 6th, 2024. And I would call the City of Monona Public Works Committee meeting to order. And again, you noted the roll.
Yes.
And minutes. I have a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'll move approval.
And any discussion, changes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Motion passes. And we have no appearances in person, and do we have anyone online? It looks like Chad is joining.
Chad's joining. Nancy. Dave was going to join, so if anybody notices in the waiting room,
Okay.
please let me know.
There's no unfinished business, new business. I know we kind of confused just in case the city posted that, or someone posted on the Facebook page that our meeting was actually at 7. So my thought was, just in case neighbors show up from Wallace and Gordon, if maybe we can make a motion to take B out of order, then come back to A.
I would make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, so B, discussion, so all those in favor, so.
Aye.
Discussion of resident, group C, discussion and consideration of Nickel Road improvement design contract. Yeah.
Brandon is in attendance tonight. He's been our project manager from the beginning with Nichols Road, so I'm gonna turn it over to Brad and he can explain things and I can fill in the blanks.
Right, so this is a resolution to approve the design contract for the Nichols Road reconstruction project. Project corridor stretches from Winnicott Road to Maywood Road. It is funded through a STBG grant through the DPO and DOT. As part of that grant, there's a lot of DOT loopholes and requirements, and so Strand is on board to assist us with that as well. This is for most of the bulk of the design work, including survey, plat, topographical, and public meeting input. So they have slated 30, 60, and 90% design meetings and 1 public information meeting in their scope of work for this project. The total cost of design for 2024 is $165,000. And then there will be another set of design requirements and DOT review. And the bulk of the DOT process has happened in 2025, so we'll have another design contract for that year as well for this project. This does not include design for utility improvements along the corridor. It does include some design work for stormwater reconstruction in certain locations, so. But it does not include any moving of water main or sanitary improvements, what have you.
So that's coming in.
Yep, that'll be a separate scope of work or a separate task order. There is some utility work that'll likely be included with this project, so it just makes sense to do it with the project. Besides that, that's pretty much it. You've probably all seen the preliminary design and scope from 2023 as it was proposed to the committee and then at capital budget time for the city council. It includes a multi-use pathway on the south side of the street for the entire stretch. The idea is that that would be tied into future pathways in Winnicott Park and in Maywood Park, including a pathway that stretches through a finger of city property that goes behind Maywood School and in the backyards of some of those properties that neighbor Maywood Park. So it also includes a realignment of that awkward Schluter intersection where there's a blind hill there. If you're at the intersection facing north, it's very difficult to see either direction with cars coming. The current pedestrian crossing at that location is at a diagonal. It's about 78 feet long, which is about twice as long as the typical crossing. And so we would realign that as well. So it's right at the crest of the hill and it's at the shortest distance across the street. And that would include moving the rapid flashing beacons that exist there today And with the possibility of adding rapid flashing beacons at the pedestrian pathway that is to the west of the parking lot for the pool. That would link up to a pathway on the south side of the street as well. So it would make sense to add a crossing there, and if needed, we could add a rapid flashing beacon there as well. So, and this would also potentially accommodate possible future civic campus improvements for the civic campus building and or parking lots. So, take any questions or?
Was the removal of the existing storm sewer outfall relocating, it says new upsize, that was, that just being it's bigger pipe?
Yes, and to get it out of the park that is right in the middle of their main event space. It backs up, there isn't, currently there is a storm drain in the parkway. Just below where the sign is at the corner of Healy.
Right.
And it pulls up if we get larger events and then it backs up into the park itself.
There's no storm sewer on Healy? Or is it's just not showing?
It's not shown on there. There is some, it comes down off of the parking lot from the library. And there's a couple inlets there,
Yeah.
and then those
So that,
lead out to that, early out walls.
that drain's gone and now Healy's moving to.
Yep.
On, okay.
Yep. And then the upsizing is all based on what would happen at the civic campus. In terms of creating more capacity to handle more impervious surfacing.
Are there any design thoughts to put in?
It wouldn't make any sense for this because the lagoon is a stormwater treatment device. Not a lot of people.
So will the water coming off the road continue to go into the lagoon?
Yes,
Cause it needs it.
There is about, really needs to bring more water in there to flush that thing.
there are future improvements planned for the lagoon. But that's down the line, so
Does that include dredging?
very likely.
That's after the current phase of Reach 64 that we're doing right now, so it'll be the next phase.
Next phase, yeah.
Got it.
You'd find a lot of bicycles,
Like what?
a lot of bicycles in there.
Table too.
When
Yeah.
when we built the Dream Park 27 years ago, there's those hand tiles in there, and somebody come through and busted them out. And they brought them over by the gazebo, and then they were flipping them out into the lagoon. And there was one hand tile that was done, and like a 3-week-old baby, and the baby had passed.
Oh, God.
And so we went, "Shit, we gotta get
Oh,
that tile." So we actually hired a diver to go in there. He was going through that. So like this.
I'm sure it's not.
Not would come a bicycle, not would come another bicycle, not would come a vending machine. And he found all the 2 tiles.
wow.
Any other questions?
Where does, so this design was just a concept design, where does the funding come from for this? Like, was we like a retainer with them or something, or?
No, design is not, if for this particular grant, design is not funded by the grant. So it's funded fully by the city.
We already had funds set aside in the 2024 capital budget that just passed. So
And then led to the creation of this, just concept design?
No, we had money in 2023 that led to more
Okay.
creation of that, yeah. There's been tweaks since, but not made.
funds for construction.
26.
That's really.
Any other questions? Comments?
Patrick,
Yeah. Nancy?
thanks. Can you, with apologies for Chad, because I should probably know this, but I haven't gone back to the bike ped plan. Can you tell, me and the group, like, I assume that this was part of the bike ped plan? Or is it an adjustment to the bike ped plan? I mean, where did it fit in the priorities?
Yeah, this was a suggestion in the ped bike plan.
Okay,
There was general suggestions in the ped bike plan to provide more off-street facilities around the civic campus. And then there was a suggested or proposed potential project to provide either a shared use path on Nichols Road or on Winnequa Road. And that was mostly so that unskilled or bikers that don't have a lot of experience can get off the lake loop when it comes to Winnequa Road, where there is no provided bike facilities, which would be between Schluter Road and going north. And bypass that, so they could get all the way from Maywood Park on off-street facilities, all the way to Progressive Lane. There's a significant portion of the lake loop that you could bypass without having to be on the street with cars.
Could you envision with such a multi-use path, though, that some people that are experienced on the bike would use it and therefore make it less bike friendly for those people that are less experienced on roads? In other words, could you see a multi-use path getting so crowded because other people that might take the road think, oh, well, this is cool, I can cut right through?
I would say it's possible. I would also say that most of the people that are very experienced riding their bike are gonna use the lake loop, because then they can get up in over by the lake itself. And it's very if they're biking through Monona and they've done it before, they'd probably prefer to be up there, I would assume.
Okay. And we don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that we don't have a lot of multi-use paths in, I mean, it was something that was certainly considered for South Winnequa. But we don't have a lot of multi-use paths in the city. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's not that many outside of parks.
Okay.
But I would just add, if you're taking the lake loop and now up where I live now, on Atwood, we've got multi-use paths coming out of our ears.
Right.
So I think that the city of Madison is definitely investing in them heavily. So it won't be an unusual thing to encounter for anyone that's getting around on a bike.
Yeah, we could also copy the Madison style, which is 8 to 10 feet with a dashed yellow line down the middle to designate the separation of lanes right and left, you know.
Yeah.
That's typically done, and you could also, put in, I mean, I don't think this plan's calling for it, but parts of the new Olbrich Park area where I live have a path that includes two-way bike traffic and a separate marked pedestrian lane. And that way you really are making it clear. If you had that concern, Nancy, you would need a slightly wider path, but that again is a common way to maximize safety on a multi-use path.
Right. And I guess I would say that that's precisely, Chad, what I was thinking about, because having spent 25 years in Chicago on using the multi-use paths on the Chicago waterfront, I can tell you that the city of Chicago first widened paths and then ended up splitting up into two different paths because the combination of cyclists, walkers, dog walkers, rollerbladers, and of course half of those people having earbuds in, or somebody, or folks being on their phones, it became really dangerous to be sharing for all those different modalities, to be sharing the same path without additional stripings, instructions, arrows, etc. And width. So, I mean, obviously Chicago It's a much bigger city, but it's in terms of the number of people that actually use that bike path or use the paths on the lakefront in Chicago, it's not that it was, hundreds of thousands of people. It's just that you had a lot of, like I said, a lot of different people sharing in different modalities using the path, and it became pretty untenable. So
I would say that, the only issue, there's a couple issues with doing an expansion. One, it wouldn't be funded by the grant because we're maxed out on the grant funding right now as it is. So it would have to be an ineligible item, which being any additional cost would be incurred by the city itself. And two, the amount of right of way that we have to fit it in is not able to fit it. We're right up against the property line with the the multi-use pathway. And therefore we would have to purchase permanent easement, which also adds cost. We're talking probably at least another 4 feet, so a 12-foot wide path as opposed to an 8. And this pathway in its current format allows us to get about a 3 to 4 foot terrace for snow storage. So we're keeping the plowed snow off of the pathway, and we're allowed to plant trees along it, so it helps with the aesthetics along Nichols, helps slow traffic down. All said and done. So just some things to consider.
sure.
So going to be an advertised alternative route to the Lake Loop, or is this just like
Yeah.
for people in the know?
No, we would post all that information once we get it installed. We would update our bike routes map.
Right.
And we send all that information to the MPO, and then they advertise it on their websites or their bike maps and whatnot.
Any questions or comments? Great. We're acting on that tonight, right? Yes. Is there a motion to approve it?
Move to approve.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And that moves us to D, discussion and consideration of 2024 capital budget amendment request to fund the purchase of replacement solid waste and recycling. Dan?
So right now, the budget does not include this purchase. We've the parts that are in the system for recycling. The city went to automated recycling in 2003. They passed that action, and I think it was 2004 when the carts rolled out. So we have about 2,700 stops, and probably 80% of those are still original carts. So they come with a 10-year warranty, and we're well past the 10-year frame. But in the last 6 months or so, we've seen a lot of carts just cracking, just body cracks, and it's not from the trucks or anything like that. They're just getting brittle from being aged out. So our inventory for trash, I think we're at 11 carts, 10 carts, somewhere in there, and the recycle, we're down to 2. So I got a price quote from Cascade Carts. That's where we bought all of our carts from. 54 each, and that's the minimum that we can order. And I'm asking for a capital budget amendment of $7,300. We do have capital budget balance remaining from a project that we did last year. There's 125,000 in there. We have some asphalt work for the bridge approaches that we have to do this summer. That's going to be probably less than 50,000. So we have adequate funding to pull funding from that account. Finance director reviewed that and gave us his okay. Every other year, I'm going to add a capital budget line item for 108 carts, just so we can keep an inventory better than what we have. We've tried to maintain about 25 inventory on each side, but they've gone quick in the last year. So Seeking your recommendation for approval. For the capital budget amendment.
It's already discount buying in bulk.
Yeah, it's already built in, so we are paying $54 per cart, or my bad, $54.38 per cart. We have a freight charge of $411. Yeah, we have $400 freight on one order and $411 on the other, so. It's not a bad deal, and we charge $65. If there's a cart swap and there's nothing wrong with the cart, the resident doesn't pay. But if they place their cart in the street and it gets hit by a car, negligence, things like that, they pay a $65 fee. So there's an admin tack on charge that we added for staff. $54 a cart is pretty good deal. So,
Is there a charge if the cart just falls apart, like the lid comes off or something?
no, we don't charge for lids or wheels.
So they can just request.
That's just built into our budget, so if a resident has a broken lid or broken wheels, they call us, we come out and fix it on the spot, they don't pay anything for that.
I assume there's various sizes as well.
Yeah, we are only sticking with the 96 and the 65, we're trying to transition out of the 32.
Makes sense. I move approval.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
54, they already spoken for, sounds like it.
We do have a list going for the recycle already, we just put 10 on the list, so.
Moving on to E, discussion and consideration of 2024 capital budget amendment request for additional funds to complete well 3 aquifer well pump maintenance. Yeah.
So we do have funding in the 2024 capital budget to pull the well 1 pump. We have a new utility foreman. He's been with us for a year. And about 3-4 weeks ago, he was reviewing the data. And he alerted me to the fact that we are close to our pumping limit in well 3. What I love about that scenario, there's a good and a bad, but what I love about it is we have a person who's been with us for a year. And who was reviewing the charts, and he spotted this. And I thought that was amazing. And so I took it from there. I studied his chart further. So the chart you see, he's got the graph for the static and pumping level. I did go back and review our levels from 2013, 14, and 15. And we were right on target, roughly 80. For those who don't know, static water level is when the pump is not out. The pumping level is when the pump is on and draws the water down in the aquifer. The page after that graph, you'll see a diagram of the pump. And that bottom 6 feet is where the water comes in. The 5 feet that you see, those are the impellers that bring it to the surface. Inside the pipe column, where the 230 feet is, there's a shaft. So, and the motor's above in the pump house. So that's how we move water from the aquifer up to the surface. Right now, if you notice on that graph, I think it was 228 feet that we got down to. So that's just above the impellers. We have about 5 feet to go before we're sucking air at the 3. So what we've done since then, well 3 is our biggest producer, and we run it more frequently. It's our lead pump. Well 2 is our number 2 pump, and well 1 is our 3rd pump. So we just shifted the cycle. So we run them all evenly now. We took one of the runs out of number 3. So we're not pumping twice in a row. We're just pumping, it's pumping 1 every 4th turn now. So we do have $25,000 approved. I'm seeking that to go an additional 20,000. I have the estimate included in the packet as well. So the base charge is $31,540. I have a goal in municipal well and pump through their televising and inspecting. We're going to try and add up to 40 feet of additional pipe column. So roughly the end, final tally might be around 43,261. I am not anticipating that we'll need a bigger pump for $12,895 or a new motor for 2,700. If we do need that, I'm coming back again. But all the other components, if we have to add pipe column, we have to add some of those other things in there. So we do have them scheduled already, which is good. So we're just waiting on committee approval here, city council on the 18th. And I think they're gonna be here within a few weeks. They're already coming in to do work on the reservoirs and stuff, so. Seeking your approval to do this capital budget amendment. The money would come from the water utility reserves. I think that's it.
So this chart's really interesting. And I'm curious what you found when you looked at 2013, 14, 15, was it similar in 16, 17, 18? But maybe more to the point is what happened in 2019, 2020?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, groundwater doesn't just go
No.
down that fast.
So City of Madison put their new well on in 2017, and it's between here and McFarland. You know, we heard through the grapevine that McFarland wells went down as well. We put in new air compressors in the first quarter of 2020. I don't believe the air compressors, we bought bigger, beefier air compressors, but filling an airline with air to determine your water level, it shouldn't matter on the size of an air compressor you have. So in 13, 14, and 15, our static levels were 80 to 85. Our pumping levels at that same time were between 165 and 174, so it follows suit. But that first quarter in 2020 and thereafter, that's a big hit.
But the first thing I thought of was, well, two things. One, in order for it, because it's static, and then at 3/4, maybe a year, it bumps or draws down, and then it's holding there again. So that's either there's additional wells that are familiar that are drawn from that same source. There's high capacity users that you're not aware of that are drawing it down, or there's an error in your sensor.
Well,
This is what we were talking about with that City of Madison well, that could be influencing.
yeah. I believe it's the well. I don't have proof, but there's really no other way we can explain it. As far as the city usage, we average about 633,000 gallons a day. That's been pretty consistent. We've actually lost high user customers over the years. We, at one point, our highest was in 2012. That was a drought year. We're up to 1.3 million a day. Once the drought went away, we were averaging about 700 to 800,000 gallons a day. But pre-COVID, we lost some bigger customers in the industrial park that brought us down to on average 630,000. And that's where we're at today, yeah. So
And this, I think that was in the packet. This is how deep? So the Macoka.
I had mentioned 9 something at council, but it's about 770, somewhere in that range. So it's a fairly deep well.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, 2018, of course, was a super wet flood.
Yeah.
That's too deep. You wouldn't see recharge after a long time. But yeah, I guess I don't doubt these figures. I'm guessing it's probably additional straws in the cup.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Any other questions? We have a motion.
a motion.
Motion approved, or a second?
I'll second.
All right, and any further discussion? No? And all those in favor?
Aye.
On to F, discussion and consideration of 2024 capital budget amendment request to fund engineering assistance with renewing WGNR approval of well four site.
Okay, Chad and Nancy, before the meeting, Nancy, the resolution that you had received in your council packet is the one that I handed out previously to this meeting. The one that was in the packet, that I mailed out last Thursday, the city administrator updated after I mailed the packet. Chad, I can email you the updated resolution, tomorrow when I get back in the office. Okay?
Okay.
So the one that's before you is the one that city council looked at on Monday, and the one that they'll be entertaining for approval on March 18th. Basically what this is, it's planning for the future. With some very small relation to anything happening here with the City Hall campus improvements. In 2001, the city submitted to the DNR the well core site location, which is Waterman Way Park, and we did have approvals. It was a 2-year approval that expired in 2003. And the city did not resubmit for approval. So we've had discussions with the work group for the City Hall improvement plan. We've had our issues now with well 3. There's PFAS that's in the groundwater. We are below the current 70, what is it, net micrograms per liter for PFAS. Probably BPP. It's parts per trillion. So we're about a 3, somewhere in that range. So we're sitting okay. But there are things happening in the groundwater that come about. You know, we've had PFAS and chlorides new here in the past few years, so I'm labeling this as getting our ducks in a row, renewing the well 4 site. So when the city is ready to either add a new well, make a decision here with well 1 at City Hall, we at least have state approval already. So I'm seeking a capital budget amendment for $10,000. Beer Record would be assisting us with the DNR renewal. Between now and when we discuss the capital budget in early fall, the city will know more about what's happening here. They'll also know more about if they want to move forward with design for well 4, but this is only to renew the DNR approval. So that's what I'm seeking your recommendation.
And is that approval only good for 2 years?
I don't know that for certain. I don't know if they changed that standard, but I'm going to say yes, only because this one was for 2 years. If it's longer, that's great. But the goal here forward is to renew it and keep it current.
You know, is it a lower cost to renew as opposed to like start up if you let it lapse?
I don't know that. We'll find all that out with this process. What the cost is to renew.
So if we renew this, is this where that well will go?
The city determined that over 20 years ago. Yeah,
Okay,
we don't have many available properties in the city.
So why it's been vacant all this time.
Yeah, that's why they don't put anything on that parcel.
does the well have to be in the middle of a park?
There's no other place in the city to put it.
This is the one that the test well was already drilled, right?
No, there was no test.
No test.
No, but just, they did the survey. Site investigation and survey is what they did and what they submitted, that the DNR approved it based on that.
Okay.
So a test well would need to be drilled should the city decide to go forward with it. There are times where if, they can use the test well if they drill it properly. But more often than not, wherever the test well is, they shift over and they drill the permanent well. Nobody knows right now where that will be within the park, so I know that question came up at city council on the first reading. We can't say this is where the well is gonna be, because that has to be determined by wherever the water is. So we just can't answer that right, but the hope is, fingers crossed, it's gonna be somewhere in that park. You know. Based on what we have with our other wells here, we should hit water. Where I came from in Wrightstown previously, they drilled a few holes and they didn't hit water, and they were down 1,000 feet, so. But this area, they're proven groundwater.
Any other questions? Nancy, Chad? Can I entertain a motion? Second?
No, second.
Second, and no further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Then what is, we'll revisit A, which is discussion of Wallace Avenue and Morgan Avenue traffic calming options. At least I can pull some more data, like we ran the.
Yes.
You wanna explain what you got?
Yep, I'll start here. At our last meeting, Patrick wanted this brought back for discussion. After that, we had Brad put the counter back out. And it was, the report is February 12th, it looks like. 85th percentile speed, 85% of the traffic on Wallace was traveling 28 miles an hour. Average daily traffic, 161 vehicles. Max speed, it looked like it was 45 miles an hour.
So during that test period, the highest speed registered during the test period is 45.
Right.
And that was once, right?
Right, and I believe.
Couple 40.
I mean, there is an issue on that street, and I want to share with the committee that, what, 3 weeks ago, I was invited to come spend some time I arrived at 3:30 on a Friday, and the very first thing that I saw was, oh, this pickup truck. Students walk towards the pickup truck and get in the pickup truck and then do a donut in the middle of the street. I lost. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then 2 minutes later, somebody else gets in the other pickup truck and drives the length of Wallace on the wrong side of the road to go make a left at the end. Then the third pickup truck follows the other three, and now they're trying to hit each other, right? They're kids messing around, right? Turns out one of the people that were involved in this was also involved in vandalizing some house on Wallace and was caught. And then also we were able to determine that the person doing the donut was also that same person. So, and I was only there for 18 minutes, and so it seems like there is an issue there, and there is an issue that, you know, police is aware because the chief has spent some time out there too in the last 2 weeks. And, you know, trying to make contact with those that are doing this. And it's definitely a high school thing. It's definitely a high school. I mean, I hate to say that it's like gender specific, but the girls that I saw get in their cars and drive away were absolutely fine, right? Every one of them, you know, was pretty respectful and it's just, so there is an issue. I think there is something that we need to do on that street based on the information that I witnessed, the information that PD is stating, and some of these speeds.
It looks like the 41 miles an hour was at 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
On February 17th.
Can you remind me, the original issue speeding or is it parking?
Parking, speeding, and basically just, and we kind of have some of the parking being addressed because now we have the crossing guard is now kind of it's kind of a new position. So he's got some additional responsibilities of monitoring parking. So he can actually, you know, record license plate numbers and make sure that people are getting citations for parking illegally. So that's helpful. The problem though is the kind of behavior when school, it's like when school starts and when school ends. You know, mostly when school ends, it seems. At least that's what I've witnessed. So you know, it's up to you guys to discuss it and think about it. But I, in my opinion, I think that we should be thinking about, you know, speed bumps or some sort of traffic calming measures in that street.
Isn't the 17th, isn't that a Saturday? Wasn't that a Saturday? 5 o'clock on a Saturday?
Texas.
Thursday.
It's Saturday or something.
Yeah, it was a weekend, because my son
It was a Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday. Yep.
Yeah.
so the high
Mm.
was on a Saturday, but it could be kids again, because they have weekend activities, I'm sure.
There was one at 45 miles an hour.
Yeah, I can't tell you who that is, or, and I can only tell you what I witnessed.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, originally, when I looked at this, I thought, oh, it really doesn't look as bad as I thought it was gonna look.
Yep.
But then when you have those types of daredevil type
Right.
kids on it, that makes
Yeah.
a whole different
Right.
scenario.
And I think that, is it like a widespread group of people doing this? No, I think it's like, in my opinion, it's like typical high school boy behavior to some degree. I mean, I was that kid to some degree also.
I believe it.
So I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't engage in such behavior.
I can't see where speed humps would alleviate that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking for suggestions, other than we have police there now. They're giving some attention. You know,
I don't, like a random weekly basis, are they there, like at 3:30 or?
yeah, the hotspot is 3:30, but 3:30 on Friday is also difficult because, you know, there's no one gonna be there if there's, as soon as there's one accident on the Beltline. You know, so, and that's, and we have like 2 officers on it. Maybe 3 if there's like some overlap, but, yeah, I mean, there is an issue on that street. And I know the neighbors are, pretty uniformly talking about it, and so I think it's worth discussing.
I don't see speed bumps helping with the donuts, but I don't know that I think that's the only thing that would help with the speed. I mean, I see people now on Winnequa and they come to a stop almost with those speed
Yeah.
bumps, like, you wanna slow
Yeah.
people down, short of 24/7 monitoring.
It's gotta be good to
What else is gonna slow them?
go over that, you.
This speed
Right
bump
there against the
is,
scene.
speed bump is less expensive than another police officer.
Right. So Wally, the former police chief, always calls them silent top. You know, you slow down, and the ones on South Winnequa are working great.
Yeah, self-enforcing.
Yeah,
Right.
They're awful.
They were supposed to call them speed.
They weren't supposed to be that big.
Well, there, you know, the ones in your neighborhood, Tim, by the bait shop. Those seem to work pretty good too, but they're not
They're
as,
mild.
yeah, they're a little milder.
I like those on my motorcycle.
Yeah. Yeah, fun with that.
Sorry.
But they're both based off the Madison model, so it comes down to the contractor and how well they
Right.
round things off, I guess, but. You know, if it is the desire of the committee, you know, we could. Do design and construction, I believe, in 1 year, you know, when we come forward with the capital budget. In August, we can have this on there, but I guess. Maybe the committee should determine how many they want. I think 2 is what Mary had suggested.
Mhm.
2 on Gordon, 2 on Wallace.
I mean, I think that would be a good start.
It'd be a good start.
I think it would be helpful. That we could readdress from there.
well, I think what we learned on Winnequa is that they have to be 200 feet apart.
They have to be 500
Yeah.
feet apart.
I don't know those minimum standards,
I
but
think it's
Why
500.
That's the question, I think it was 200.
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
That's what's in my brain.
That's what rings to.
the engineer will peek at that, but I think if we set aside some dollars. We'll hit them up right away in January to do some preliminary engineering, come in here and discuss it with you all, and then we move forward with a final design, and it could be, I'm not sure. You know, they know how to design them already, the design is standard, but I guess the locations is what we really have to figure out. And is it gonna be 2 or is it gonna be 3? And then we just have to make sure we have the right amount of dollars. So.
Well, it's hard to believe that those 2 streets people can speed on. I mean, they're so short. They're pretty narrow, aren't they?
They're a standard. I don't have it in front of me, but I think they're
Yeah, no,
30, yeah, I would say, there's enough room to park on both sides.
Yeah.
so-
You don't drive on that street unless you're going somewhere there, you
Yeah.
know, like parking for school or you
Yeah.
live there. It amazes me that. I hate to see us become a city of speed bumps. I really do.
Yeah.
But if they're needed.
mean, I agree, I don't wanna see a whole city of street bumps, speed bumps either.
But usually you see speed bumps on commuter streets. You don't see them on little, small neighborhood streets usually.
But, you know, in school zones where
Maybe,
this is, you know, maybe
Maybe.
they're more common, but
I mean, I would consider reducing the speed limit too, only because it makes the fines larger.
right, but then you have to be able to enforce it.
yeah, they don't
So,
look at the speed anyway.
You said that you saw at least 3 trucks.
Yeah.
Imagine then you were able to kind of get an idea of their age.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or, I mean, we're talking now, these speed bumps going in not this summer, but the following summer. Those kids gonna be graduated.
That's a good question. I don't know.
There'll be more.
I mean,
there's some problems.
Yeah, there's,
Making more.
there'll be another group that replaces, yeah. And you know, it's I would like to try and figure out how to get people, I was amazed at how many people were driving on the wrong side of the street for some reason. And for some, they would like start on the mid-block, pull out, get in the left lane, and then drive on the wrong side of the road to then make a left turn. But drive the whole length, and it wasn't just those trucks, it was like other students too, like, what is going on? And how do you prevent that from happening? I mean, short of standing there and,
Was it because of the parking on the, no?
no, it's just a weird,
Just
weird
weird.
desire to, maybe it's because it's just a
Because it's a quiet street.
quiet street,
Yeah.
that it's like, oh, well, I just might as well get in the
Yeah.
left lane now and
Nobody
turn
will
left. Okay. And I thought maybe, I don't know if this is even standard practice, but if we could get a line before the intersection. So it's just kind of another visual cue, like you're supposed to be on this side of the road and not on the left side of the road. You know,
You know, Patrick, I think it was you once that talked about some education at the high school
they're working on it.
and
Yeah.
maybe some threats at the high school.
I know the resource officer has been pretty active about this, and also he was kind of instrumental in figuring out who the cheese bandit was. I don't know, did you hear about the cheese bandit?
No.
Okay, so the residents will approach people that are doing stupid things, and then, of course, then there's some retaliation that happens. So in one case, somebody's house got plastered with cheese.
Ah.
And of course, it's a very Wisconsin thing, right? Like, I'm surprised it didn't end up on Jimmy Kimmel, you know, like, oh, they're vandalizing homes with cheese in Wisconsin, right? But still, it's annoying.
But also with their people.
Yeah, it's annoying. But it turned out that one of the drivers of the trucks was the person behind the cheese incident too. So we were able, the resource officer was able to put those things together. So-
So why didn't they just get the license number?
Yeah.
And call the cop?
That's what they do,
Yeah.
but you know, it's like you get a warning letter from the police. And in this case, this one driver in the truck has received like 4 warning letters from the police. And then they tried to meet with the parents and the parents don't respond. And then finally, after the incident with the cheese, then it was a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then they met with the parents and it's, you know. So that's laughing.
Is this melted cheese? What are we talking about here? I'm just trying to understand.
It's Kraft single
Oh.
to be specific.
So now you gotta do something with the plastic.
Wow.
Yes, yes,
Ah.
because I guess
Okay.
it sticks. And it sticks very well. Brad was telling us that someone vandalized I guess this happens now. Someone vandalized his Jeep with Kraft singles.
So, you don't even take the plastic off.
You take the plastic off and then stick it to the vehicle and
Now you know, so you can choose.
But only in the case of Brad, it made actual damage to the paint because it melted in the sun and then whatever. So
Wow.
I guess we're vandalizing the cheese now. The days of eggs and shaving cream are over. Toilet paper. So anyway, yeah,
So a couple of things come to mind. I mean, I'm definitely
you
aware.
would
of-
rather see Brie than the Kraft single?
No,
it's
I'm
just-
definitely aware of the neighbor, you know, I've also spent time in the neighborhood and I'm definitely aware of how upset the neighborhood is and how difficult it is frankly, on those 2 streets around the high school. The number of students driving to school is not getting smaller. It's just and the school has no way to go, you know, nowhere to go because, you know, they're on Madison property and they've run out of room. So, it's definitely a problem, although I share Leslie's concern that we can't speed bump our way out of issues. And so I guess I'm wondering, to Leslie's point around, like, especially because it sounds like this one individual in particular, or maybe two individuals, sounds like they're primary culprits, and it seems like, are we putting in all these speed bumps to deal with 2 or 3 people out of 150 people, that park there,
Yeah.
right? And so I guess one of my questions would be, is there a potential alternative in placing some cameras, to Leslie's point around getting license plate numbers, or placing some cameras on, utility poles or something, that where we could monitor and capture potentially a record of who it is that's speeding. I mean, I know, I asked about this actually around South Winnequa too, because in Europe, there's, all over where I work in Europe and Portugal, in all these rural towns, they don't need police officers because they have cameras there. And if you're speeding, you get a speeding ticket. If you go by, so.
I don't think we're allowed to do that in Wisconsin, are we?
No,
That's
we're not.
exactly what I was told. That's exactly what I was told by the chief when I asked if there was a way to do that. But certainly we could have, first of all, we would have record of which students are doing it, right? Or which folks are doing it, whether or not we give them a ticket for the speeding, or whether or not there's some other action that could be taken. I don't know. I just, again, I share Leslie's thing that to have speed bumps seems, I mean, there's a lot of speeding and I'm sure at other small streets. I mean, obviously there was in Maywood, which is why we put speed bumps in Maywood, right? Or sorry, McKenna. So it's just, I could see this being a slippery slope, is what I'm saying.
I understand where you're coming from, but I just want to emphasize too, that was my observation was like a 12-minute snapshot of what was going on there from 3:30 to, 3:44. And then I was told by the neighbors that I was with that was a very mild Friday compared to what they normally see. So.
Right. Right.
and
Well, I was using your certainly your firsthand experience, but I was also using the data that Dan had that didn't seem like it was that bad. So.
Yep.
I just didn't know if cameras might be an alternative.
That's an interesting idea for observation, but then who are they watched? Are they monitored? How are they monitored? Somebody's got to look at it. Yes. I mean, like, are they watched in real time, or if there's an incident, then they have to go back and look at when.
So the city maintained temporary radar with cameras capture.
We don't do any of that. We're too small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a police thing.
Yeah, that's.
Yes.
But I know they sell it to municipalities. It's buy them online if you want. So-
Well, Madison Traffic, they do all the Madison cameras and stuff, but their department is a couple hundred people, and I have 8. So
I think we want to deter. I remember years ago by the brush site, we put up cameras there. They weren't even working, but it was a way to encourage people not to put brush sticks in with the yard waste. You probably weren't here yet.
oh, we did that under my
Yeah.
watch, and then we actually put real ones in. And
Yeah, later.
Then we're able to get
Real
all the
ones.
people who dump washers and dryers in front of it.
It's a lot of brushing.
Um,
But I was just thinking, my sister was a principal and she always said that to get behavior out of the kids, you have to inconvenience the parents. And if you could catch the kids who are doing this, you go to their parents. Maybe the parents are good parents and they'll yank that license, or maybe they won't because that would inconvenience them, I don't know. But I mean, maybe that's too much work. I don't know.
And we can evaluate it. I'm happy to ask the chief about that and how that would work, and then bring it back to the next meeting and tell you what I learned. you know, I don't want to refer like a. Put this on your agenda, discuss it right now, but I can ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, traffic calming is under our umbrella.
Yeah, traffic calming's under our umbrella, and are there other things that we could do besides speed humps for traffic calming? Like, I think this isn't really happening anymore, but like in Madison, where they put some of those circles in the
Traffic
intersection,
circle,
traffic
the
circles.
small traffic circles. I mean, they do work, that's another, but then you. You know, like the larger semis and, you know, fire trucks and things like that. We would have to have, one of the engineers. Run a model and just to see how that works, but yeah,
'Cause those are kind of nice, 'cause at least you can plant in them and they look nice and.
well, in a traffic circle, I think the centers are not vegetative, I know roundabouts, they have the vegetation and stuff.
Okay.
But usually the residential intersections are smaller, and that's where the traffic circles work.
Okay.
I'm just trying
Yeah,
to
it would only
think,
work at the intersection. You couldn't do that
Yeah.
down the street.
Yeah.
right?
yeah. I know what we just removed on South Winnequa, but that was because the bike lanes went through them, but the bump outs. At intersections, to protect parked cars and to help get the crosswalks out there. But that's just at intersections, you could have mid-block bump outs. But we also have alternate site parking there, so then the center line moves every day.
So it sounds like,
I mean, I think at this point, if there's not a rush, then I would recommend we have an engineer look at the options in 2025, and if there's something that comes out of it, we plan something in 2026. So based on the next agenda item too, there might be something that you can package together.
So do you know, so it's a good point to have a traffic engineer, they make decisions based on data. We have the data in front of us. If I were to look at this, agree with what's been said, that I don't really see a problem. I
Right.
see pretty normal traffic behavior.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And so what I'm concerned is that we're making decision based on data that supports a different decision. And I think really we're talking about teenage behavior here.
Yeah.
28 miles an hour is not bad for natural speed.
No,
I mean, that's,
not at all.
yeah. It's
And the
just,
fact that it happens on Saturday and Sunday as well.
right. It's just the knuckleheads who are showing off when they leave school.
Yeah, he would certainly slow traffic down.
Yeah.
But is it gonna solve the problem?
Right.
and there's no like radar actuated, spike strips. Or they just.
I like the way-
Yeah.
What's that?
I like the way you think.
Like that.
Just don't listen to the pothole. Set street and,
Right,
have a reverse,
right.
have a reverse.
Reverse speed.
Reverse.
They're cheap.
So maybe that's the best course, is to get some money set aside for next year and have a traffic engineer look at all the options. Talk with the committee, and then we figure that out next year. At least it shows people were looking at it.
I want to address the neighborhood concerns, but I want to do it in a way that makes sense.
Right.
And that's why I want
We-
to have you guys.
It seems to me maybe, it would make sense, I mean, Dan, I can't remember what dates you had data for, but perhaps it's, perhaps it makes sense to collect more data, and see if maybe, you just happen to collect data on a really mellow time, and it's not usually like that. I mean, we certainly are hearing from residents the opposite of what the data is showing.
Well, I have thoughts on that, but
What if we, now, this spring, obviously, I think we should collect some more data this spring. I would recommend that.
like in May, 2 weeks before school itself,
Yes.
and everybody's jazzed up because
Yes.
spring is here.
Yes. just to look at
And
that
maybe
data
once
set.
again during the summer.
Right,
Yep,
Yeah.
when there's no,
yeah,
Right.
I think the broader.
I mean, that
data
would
set-
be our control group, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
broader data set that we have, the
Yeah.
better. And if we find that, you know, the average speed is 28 miles an hour in the summer and it's 28 miles an hour here, then, well, that tells us.
right,
And, you know, that doesn't detect the idiot doing the donut.
Right.
Right.
But,
but when Brad looked at some of the times that this happening. There was, I think he said someone around midnight or 2 a.m. Who was consistent on the last set of data.
Hmm.
That's somebody either coming home from work or leaving for work, but it's
Or-
local.
the coming home from the bar.
Yeah,
Yes,
or,
yes.
yeah.
It's still local.
Yes.
So, but like Tim said, you know, if we tested in May and then tested again in June.
Yep.
And you get the same data,
Well, let's, I would like to do that.
So I guess, I'm a big fan of speed bumps. I think that's, whereas, when Jen was chair, she brought in stuff from other cities and they, someplace in Iowa call them speed cushions. Okay, but I think that's the speed humps are the only things that are gonna stop people. My concern is that if we put them there, will we have to put them everywhere?
Oh, if we put them there, they'll be
Oh,
on, they'll be on Gordon too.
And
Everybody will ask
Yeah.
for it.
there's kind of a mild consensus here that may be the only thing that we can do. But I'm wondering if this is more of a enforcement issue. I mean, is it up to, is public safety talking about this?
Yes, we had a meeting, so, did I tell you, I don't know if I told you this or not, so this conversation is an outgrowth of, we had a public meeting at the high school, with the neighborhood residents, talking about concerns with the principal, the resource officer, the chief, and others. So we had about 15 people come out from the neighborhood, talking about the issues that they're dealing with. And, you know, everyone had very strong feelings about, and they were all from Wallace. Everybody had very strong feelings about what was going on, and the discussion involved the principal, and things that we might be able to do. So public safety was talking about permitting with the school. And the principal was talking about that, how he was kind of in favor of something like that. So then there was something that they could take away from people. But the problem is that they're gonna find another place to park in Monona. And then, you know, the other issue is the neighborhood is talking about how Cold Spring, across the street in Madison is closed to students with gate.
Yeah.
And they're like, why can't we have something like that? And, you know, we're trying to explain at the same time that, well, that's not Madison School, you know, so they're dealing with an issue because of the school. Well, this is our school, so we're trying, you know, it's a different set of circumstances. We'll have Monona parents super upset if suddenly there's no parking at all.
Right.
So yes, but we can't just eliminate, I mean, I don't think it's not practical just to eliminate parking during the day. Because then again, it's also we gotta have someone enforce that, otherwise it's meaningless. So that's the discussion that we had from a public safety perspective, but there's some resistance, or appears to be a little bit of a resistance from as far as taking up permitting on public safety right now. So
But you were able to
Saying-
be in that.
Patrick, you're saying that the school actually liked the idea of permitting?
the principal was open to the idea, something tangible that they could take away and enforce, you know, so,
Take away.
yeah, the permit, you know, like.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
I
yeah,
get it.
but
Yes.
then the conversation
But in a public
involved,
street, how can
yes,
you?
yeah. So,
See how you can do that.
Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you how you do that because I lived in Chicago for 25 years and I mean, you know, virtually every single neighborhood or I don't want to say every single, a lot of the neighborhoods in Chicago have permitted parking, and the way it works is if you're a resident of the neighborhood, you know, you get a parking sticker for your cars or car. And if you're not a resident of the neighborhood, you have to have a sticker in your car when you park there. So like, for instance, you know, in Edgewater, where I had a friend, every time I went down to visit the friend, he lived on the third floor, so he would actually wrap a permit around a pencil and drop it from the third floor, out the third floor window. And I'd catch it and put it in my car before I came upstairs. And you know, it sounds like a pain in the neck, I know, but it works. That's how they keep, you know, because
Uh,
it's an urban environment, so,
You know, where I went to school in Brunswick, New Jersey too, we had street parking permits, but. The way we discussed this at that meeting was that, and this is not a public works issue, so we should probably not discuss it ad nauseum. But it was, if the school participated and we could kind of do a study with public safety and identify how many parking spaces there could potentially be on a particular street, like, then we know that, like, the green sticker, you know, it's permit parking from 8 PM to 4 PM, Monday through Friday. And then we know that we can fit 40 cars on Wallace, right? So the students with the red sticker can park on Wallace. Students with the green sticker can park on Gordon and so forth. So we know that there's like an identifiable amount of space and can better moderate how many people are parking where, right? And then there's something you take away from somebody too. But all the other neighbors, when I first started talking about this, reached out and some of them were upset because they're like, well, the student's just gonna move to my street. We're like, well, yeah, that's probably gonna happen. So, and then it's just gonna get further and further away, and then suddenly the entire city of Monona is now permit parking from 8 to 4, you know? So, you know, anyway, we should probably stop talking about the permit thing, because that's not our purview. So, yes. We're talking.
Patrick,
Yes.
I just wanted to make a quick comment because when we were talking earlier about how one of the speeding events happened on the weekend, I just wanted to point out, as somewhat of a traffic calming geek, that you know, when a lot of cars are parked on a street, that has its own inherent calming. And so the weekends would be when the students are not parked on the street, and you would actually expect to see more speeders when there are few people on the street. And I just point that out because,
Yeah.
I mean, weirdly, when the kids are parking on the street, that has the effect of slowing down the traffic during the middle of the day.
you betcha.
And, you know, now that you mentioned that too, there is one more thing we can talk about regarding this, and that's sidewalks. Right, because the general sense of the neighborhood is the speeding makes it unsafe, right? Because there's no place for kids to walk. And the kids play in the street because there's no sidewalks. I mean, we could talk about sidewalks too.
It could be part of the engineering discussion in 2025.
What's that?
Everybody wants to talk sidewalks.
You know, but it's
Everybody.
actually.
Sorry. Like,
No.
That's what I hear.
You hear like,
As they want them or not want them.
They want them. People with little kids want them, but then their neighbor across the street does not.
Does not,
want them.
yes.
So.
Yeah.
That's such
So
a.
Pat, you mentioned earlier something about a crossing guard.
yes, the crossing guards now are like
High school, how's it?
you know, I can't remember his new title.
Community service.
Community service something. And so basically he's got some additional duties now where I think it's like 15 or 20 hours a week. He's kind of doing some of that parking enforcement type things. So
He's half hour to 45 minutes a day after he gets done.
something like that.
Yeah, so he goes and checks the hot areas
Mhm.
for parking and notices on the.
Puts notices on the car and then can communicate with the police and has a radio and yes. So,
Yeah, it seems that he's there at the right times.
Yeah.
In the morning.
well, we know when the right times are. The right times are at, you know, 8 and 3:30.
Yeah, and that's relatively new, right?
Yeah.
So maybe just word of mouth,
Mhm.
that his presence,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's really-
Sure.
So.
And the issue there is that people are ignoring state law, like to park 4 feet away from the driveway or 3 feet away or whatever the.
Yeah.
Right, or blocking mailboxes, et cetera, so, yeah.
All right. So what we're doing is we're asking to continue to collect data right now.
Yep, I have it on the list for May and June,
Okay.
for data counts.
And then maybe look at some of that traffic engineering for
2025
2025, talk about,
for the capital budget.
talk about like design options or look at some options. Whether it's sidewalks, speed humps, circles, take a look at that stuff, right?
Did the residents express any solution? Or I know they're really good at expressing the problem, but anybody come up with that?
Speed humps.
That's what they want.
Yes, yeah. It's,
So just to be clear, once we collect the data, are we anticipating that we would, build it in if we decided to go with speed bumps? Are we anticipating that we would build it into the 25 capital budget? Or are you saying you wouldn't build it into the budget until 26?
yeah. 25, yes,
Okay.
25, Nancy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, cause I thought I heard 26 earlier and I was gonna say, I think the residents would be pretty disappointed if
Yeah.
nothing was gonna happen until 26. So,
Yeah. So, okay,
so I would also encourage, again, maybe encourage a conversation around cameras, to see if, again, to Leslie's point around being a deterrent in some way, or public safety being able to monitor them if we had them, or somebody being able to monitor
yep,
them.
I think I mentioned in there that I was gonna talk to the chief about that.
Okay, great.
All right, and we don't need to act on this, just because you have notes about what we want to.
Yes, discussion for
Okay,
tonight.
discussion only. All right, moving on to the discussion of resident concerns and complaints about unsafe traffic and pedestrian safety on Bridge Road.
So I received lists through the website. We've had received complaints in the past about Bridge Road. Not so much Frostwoods, but it's that Collector Street corridor. They take Monona Drive, Frostwoods to Bridge Road, and then Bridge Road out to Broadway. So it's a section of Bridge Road where the park is, very wide. He does a really nice job of explaining what he sees there. And this is similar to the complaints we've had in the past. And other traffic calming options here would work as well. You could do the bump outs there, mid-block bump outs with crosswalks. The street's wide enough where the bike lanes would be outside of the bump outs, not through the bump outs. It protect the parking lanes, things like that, sidewalks, but he has similar issues. Cars driving in the parking lane. So I think if we dedicate traffic engineering dollars to Wallace and Gordon in 2025, we could make this part of that and have them review this as well. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at what.
Calls out for a sidewalk, I think.
Yeah,
That road's so wide.
Yes,
Mhm,
yes.
along with the park there too.
I know.
yeah,
Now, does that go to the multi-use path that we were talking about earlier? Is that part of would that be part of the system?
this section
No,
is quite a ways away
Yeah.
from any,
Okay.
yeah,
so,
that's something for the committee to figure out.
yeah,
The limits of things and.
Frostwood says sidewalks, doesn't it?
I don't. No.
no, I walk it every day and I'm like, no, I'm there for sidewalks. Yeah. I mean, I think Leslie's right, it does, if there's anywhere that calls for, that makes sense for sidewalks, it's there.
But on this stretch of road, it's your options are greater of what you can do than what they are on Wallace and Gordon, so.
And you could put a median.
Yeah, or you could,
Really?
move the curb or, there are so many things you could do.
You could,
So.
Has this gotten worse because of Winnequa Road? Because when I'm
No, we had
riding with
these,
some people and they say, I'm going straight, I hate those humps, you know, and.
we had these issues before
Yeah, I
Winter
think
was
I think
redone.
we did, yeah.
But one of the reasons that they're coming down Frostwoods and then down Bridge Road is they're trying to avoid the light at
Yes,
the bottom. Is there a way to time that differently so that it's more efficient down there?
At Monona Drive and Broadway. I think they got that thing fine tuned as they can get it. I think people could stack differently on their own. I think they all line up in that right lane.
Yeah.
And a lot of them turn right on Broadway. I think if half of them actually go in the center lane, the vehicles that turn right on Broadway, then they can cut over.
Mhm.
I see that a lot, so I think it comes to driver. Probably just figuring out what's best for them to do a lane change. But we don't have any more right of way down there to do anything with lanes. So.
Can we start the process of looking at engineering? Options for Bridge Road and possibly Frostwoods?
It would have to wait until next year's budget because we don't have a task order or money for it for 24. So
With getting traffic counts, help?
we have plans to do that already
Okay.
for Frostwoods and Bridge Road, several locations.
Okay.
Narrowing the road. And sidewalks. Would be. There's no reason that it needs to be that wide, other than what do you do with that space if you make it narrow?
You just give more terrace to people,
More terrace.
or you narrow the road and put a sidewalk in, so wherever the road is, that's where the sidewalk now is. I mean, those are all options. I think it's parking on south or northbound right now, Parkside. So there's good spacing out there. There's a lot of.
Is that what the traffic engineer can look at, if like you said, it's put into the budget
Yep.
for next year? we can
Absolutely.
see the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, let's do that.
So Dan, can you just share a little bit more about how often this has come up? I mean, I'm not saying that it's not an issue, but again, is this I mean, is this something that you've perpetually heard about? I just don't, I don't want us to go down a path of, again, spending a lot of money on a solution if there's really not that big of a problem. If it's
Yeah.
on a regular basis, or you hear about it from more than one person. Yeah, Chad.
Could I interject here, Dan? I mean, this, Nancy, was a particular corridor that we talked a lot about on the pedestrian and bike committee. Just because it is a kind of a collector, it's a secondary like path that has a lot of demand put on it, and it connects a lot of dots, no matter what type of transportation you're using. And with the park in that location,
Okay.
and so it just, like, this was identified as an area that we should do something to improve the infrastructure. And I know we were talking earlier about a multi-use path, but we're right now we're talking about a road that's too wide, which encourages speeding or makes it easier to speed. There aren't a lot of people that park along it, so we're not calming inherently by having congestion and parking. But if we had a multi-use path, for example, you'd get everyone off the street and kill a lot of birds with one stone. But that's a big investment. It requires planning.
And I think what I can do is probably email out so everybody can take a look at that bike ped plan that we did create. Because it's kind of timely with the scenarios we have going on right now. And if we're gonna have future discussions here, at least everybody would have had a chance to review that. But Nancy, getting back to your question, I would put it up to about 12. And I'm not sure if you remember Curtis Jones, who lived in that area. He was a frequent contactor. I'm not sure if he still lives in the neighborhood anymore. He had young children at the time when he made his concerns known. But it was I know it spiked when we restriped it. We had taken parking away on the southbound side and put it on the park side. And then we got a lot of complaints of cars driving in the parking lane. So
Mhm.
we added signage, but I would probably put it around a dozen.
Okay.
Or so.
Great. Well, that was my first question. My second one was where was it in the bike ped plan? And Chad just answered that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Instead of a sidewalk, though, you could do a multi-use path, right?
Oh, sure.
Narrow it, do the,
Narrow and put a path
and
in.
then you could maybe put a border on the multi-use path.
What we would have to look at. Because the road does narrow, I believe, around the curve.
Hmm.
So we would have to check out available space. How long the path would be, and then when you convert to sidewalks, things like that, but an engineer would be able to assist with all that.
Have you seen over by, John Nolan, Broom and Wilson? The west, they elevated the multi-use path, and it goes across driveways too. But, I mean, I don't,
It's identified through the driveway, the path, really? Okay.
but yeah, and then it goes, and they now have Bassett. Striped for, multi-use. So that it connects up with that, and it's, Bassett down, that far down south, near John Nolan is only one lane. To get, over to John Nolan.
But it serves as like traffic calming as well, so it's like.
Yeah.
Purpose.
Cause I mean, it cut that street basically in half.
Yeah.
And now you don't have so many cars jostling. Trying to decide whether they wanna,
Might go straight or turn right on.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think once we do the traffic counts, I'll bring that data back. We typically don't have a July meeting because of the 4th of July holiday. I guess we'll communicate on that.
Yeah, if we have a reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's August that we talk about the capital budget and the operating budgets in September, so. I'll start lining some things up as far as pricing goes for.
Okay.
Engineering assistance.
Okay, good. All right. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Ready? And I don't, so I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I would so move. Second. All those in favor? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a
Bye,
good night.
thank you.
Thank you.